On the planet Dokken, Professor Wally, the professor counterpart to Wally, shows Emperor John, the emperor counterpart to John Arbuckle, his new invention, the Muskrum ray gun. A device powered by the Klapman crystal that can scramble inanimate objects and organisms into new creatures under the user's control, but the emperor is more concerned about finding a wife to continue the royal line. Soon a warship led by Wetwix, the super-villain counterpart to Liz, lands outside the palace and Emperor John instantly falls in love with her, asking if he can marry her. She agrees, but only because she wanted to steal the muskrum. She zombifies the Emperor's guards, forcing Professor Wally to summon the pet force, Garzuka, Garfield's superhero counterpart, Odysseus, Odie's superhero counterpart, Abnormal, Normal's superhero counterpart, and Stalina, Arlene's superhero counterpart, to save them, but Wetwix zombifies the pet force except Garzuka. Garzuka manages to get hold of the Klapman and escapes with the professor in a secret passageway. The professor uses his computer to search the universe for counterparts with DNA matches with the pet force, and when he does, he gives Garzuka their pictures and some serums that will transform them into the pet force, who then takes off to the comic world, leaving Professor Wally and Wetwix, who's bound for revenge, behind. The situation was revealed to be a comic book Nermal was reading during a cookout with John and the gang. Nermal is really excited about getting the next 100th edition issue. Garfield's friends go to the comic studio to work their new strip without Garfield, who wants to finish all the hot dogs. Nermal gets the new Pet Force issue from a newsstand, with Garzuka jumping out of a comic book afterwards. Nermal finds that the events that are happening to them are in the comic book, and the rest of the book is blank because they have not happened yet. Garzuka heads for John's house, and is told where Odie, Arlene, and Nermal are by Garfield. Garzuka gives Garfield the Klapman as well, telling him to protect it. In the living room at the comic studios, Nermal, Arlene, and Odie not eyes Garzuka behind them after Nermal reads the new comic book. Garzuka hands them the serums, asking them to help him stop Wetwix. But they don't change immediately after they drink the serums. However, it's time for Odie, Arlene, and Nermal to go to work, and Garzuka follows. Meanwhile, the real Garfield is enjoying a relaxing day all to himself, but is captured by Wetwix, who mistakes him for G. Azuka, as his DNA is similar to Garzuka's, and threatens him for the Klapman, but to no avail because Garfield is a cartoon character. Garfield tries to protect the Klapman by putting it in his mouth. But eventually Wetwix guards get it. Garfield is told by Professor Wally to go over to Emperor John, who then tells him to grab the professor's lens and put it on the window. The sunlight loosens the Emperor and the professor's ropes while Wetwix orders her guards to get rid of Garfield. They then throw him down the garbage chute. Back at comic studios, the gang is interrupted by Wetwix, who zombifies most of the characters at the studio. Nermal, Odie, Arlene, John, and Garzuka escape to the back alley and meet up with Garfield. Nermal, Odie, and Arlene's serum kick in and transform into their pet force counterparts. Garzuka and his team then go off to fight Wetwix. Employee Ellie saves Garfield by sucking him up an air vent, but John gets zombified with a nearby trash can. Wetwix causes chaos, zombifying all of Cartoon World, as the citizens of Comic World try to make a run for it but are unsuccessful. Ellie scolds Garfield for not helping Garzuka, and if he hadn't been so lazy, then Wetwix wouldn't have gotten the Klapman. Ellie and Garfield manage to find 3 survivors: Wally Stegman, his wife Benita, and assistant director Betty. Garfield names himself and the survivors the CR crew, and forms their own plan to help Garzuka's crew and to stop Wetwix. Meanwhile, the zombies break into the tower, making the pet force escape to the top. Garzuka realizes the zombies are too much for them as his allies start to feel weakened and outnumbered. Garfield and Wally pretend to be zombies, then disguise themselves as Garzuka and get the zombies' attention, making them the zombies chase them to the comic studio. And Ellie opens the pit in the filming area, in which the zombies fall into. The real Garzuka and the Pet Force head to the antenna and use it to bring down Wetwick's ship, but Wetwick fires up the Muskrum. Using the Super Scramble mode, zombifying the Pet Force and creating a monster made from the town's buildings. Emperor John and Professor Wally break free and take over the ship, flying into the air, making Wetwick's fall off. Meanwhile, Wetwick's ship with Professor Wally and Emperor John controlling it, lands near the back alley of Comic Studio, and the crazy crew meet Emperor John and Professor Wally, who let Garfield enter the ship. Garfield seizes control of the Muskrum and dezombifies the residents, destroys the monster, combines Wetwick's with the Smile section, an invention that makes people happy, turning her into a good guy who then for the second time, accepts the Emperor's proposal. The Pet Force turn back into their original forms and Garzuka, Wetwick's the professor who vows to destroy the Muskrum after reversing the damage on Dawn, and the Emperor return to their world while the comic world residents rebuild their civilization. A reformed Garfield and Arlene are then seen taking off to the stars. During the credits while watching Emperor John's wedding, the gang are watching but they see that Betty has moved to Dawn. It looks like there will have to be a new assistant to director Charles, which Nirmal is eager to take.